the ability for you to over deliver for your customer has never been more important, and it's only going to become more challenging. And so one of those big things is making sure that they have a great consumer experience, and going back to like, where are the moments where most brands fail? It is around, we'll say, like over delivering around like the replenishment period. Obviously, you need to have a good product.
Welcome to the High Voltage Business Builders Podcast, a show where we interview high voltage entrepreneurs growing and scaling through e-commerce, real estate, and other wealth without Wall Street ventures, showing you the path to making your first or next million. All right, folks, welcome back to the call. Appreciate you. My name's Neil, and this is the High Voltage Business Builders Podcast. If you are wanting to listen to Joe Rogan, you're on the wrong podcast. But if you want to listen to me today, and we're going to talk about e-com, business, finance, we're going to talk about strategies and the 3 tips you need to do to maximize your opportunity for subscription in the e-commerce world, whether you're going to start a subscription or you want to add it on to existing products and figure out how to do that in a very clever and unique way to increase your customer lifetime value. That's the call we're going to have today. Buckle up. Let's talk to Ben. Ben, welcome to the call.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, my man. So let's get into the details of this. You got 3 tips that we should all know. So let's just get into the meat of it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about you and your business and things you've done.
Sure. I will say the tips kind of require a little bit of context, but I'll say just as a high level, and we can go into like why these matter. But I'd say like the 3 mistakes that I've seen with subscriptions is having too high of a discount, meaning that you're basically making subscriptions so attractive that your people who don't even want to subscribe to your product are just signing up, which leads to a really high churn after the first month. You're basically offering a 30% discount to people who would probably pay full price. The second tip is focusing on subscription at the expense for the rest of your business. One of the big things is, even though I run effectively a platform for having a subscription business model in e-commerce, subscriptions are just one piece of the puzzle. There's a bunch of other strategies that really need to be paired with subscription for you to maximize customer lifetime value. And then I guess the third one is not having a recurring subscription at all in your business. That's the third mistake, because depending on most e-commerce brands, not all of them are a natural subscription, but there's other sort of variations around like membership and sort of perks that you can offer that will have a recurring revenue piece to them that aren't necessarily we'll call it typical product subscription.
Okay, let's dig into this just a little bit. So in terms of if I have a product or I don't have a product, how do you normally strategize around the best, types of products or types of structure of an offer to add to a new one or add to an existing one?
Yeah, so I'll just for context, I'll say like I have experience from just working with brands over the years. I am by no means a marketing expert. My background is really on the technology side, and I've been a fractional CTO for a lot of brands. So I know this from working with our customers. But what I will say is the part where I provide, I guess, the most amount of value is really on understanding how to pair the strategy with the technology. I think there's sort of 2 pieces there. There's people who aren't offering subscriptions today, defining their initial subscription strategy. And then there's folks who have an existing subscription program. What do they do? And so for folks who have an existing program, what I typically would look at is, what is your retention after your first month? And then what's your retention after your first renewal? Because those will really show you sort of the 2 big gaps in your consumer experience. And it can also indicate product issues, as well as going back to like highly discounting your product. You'll see a lot of people who cancel even before they've received the product, right? So that can actually, from a data perspective, be really helpful in identifying potential issues with your offer, and that maybe you're making it a bit too sweet to subscribe.
So what are some of those reasons? So a bit too sweet. Why do people typically and emotionally cancel a subscription before they even get the product?
Well, so I think to understand why people cancel subscriptions, I think it is helpful to have some context and sort of zoom out a bit, where subscriptions in e-commerce over the last 7 years have had enormous growth. Like, it has been one of the fastest growing segments of e-commerce. I think the latest stat that I read was 75% of direct-to-consumer brands now offer some sort of subscription. And so the challenge there is that, subscriptions are great for consumers and for brands in particular, but people are starting to get burnt out from bad subscription experiences, right? So when everyone and their mom is offering a subscription, you're just much more likely to have a bad experience. And the number one bad experience, and this is the number one reason people churn, is receiving too much product. So it's really a issue around the consumption period, right? Where probably everyone's had that experience where you haven't finished your initial order and then you get another one. And now you basically have this emotional experience of parting with your hard-earned money. And so the first thing someone will typically do is they'll go in and cancel. So going into like what is the primary driver for churn, it typically is that you receive too much product, which is an avoidable challenge, but it's hard to necessarily anticipate for every single customer what is the right interval for them, because that varies over time and it varies based off lifestyle.
We do the same. I mean, we have the same sort of problem with the, coffee deliveries, right? So on Amazon, Subscribe and Save, which is probably, I think, some of the cutting edge aspect of the adoption that direct to consumers have taken following along with Amazon Subscribe and Save, making it so easy for you, is that, we get a 5-pound bag of coffee and then we might not have that 5-pound bag already gone by the time the next one shows up. So you can either store it or you can be like, that's too much coffee, or, too much toothpaste, or too much whatever, too much laundry soap. I mean, it can back up really fast if you're not careful. So what's the solution to that kind of problem that allows the consumer to stay involved but not have to cancel the, subscription completely, right?
I mean, so it's a couple things. And I think the key word that I go back to is nuance. Like, providing a great consumer experience is nuanced. One of the challenges with most subscriptions is that they're very binary. You're either a subscriber or you're not. And so to your point around the coffee, like you might consume more coffee one month than another. And so sort of the things that I've learned from brands who are winning, one of which is don't be scared to communicate with your subscribers. I will say that is like the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of brands is, I don't want to remind someone that they have a subscription, because that is a moment that they'll cancel. Typically what we've seen in our data is actually that they typically don't cancel. They do adjust their renewal interval or their next scheduled date. So actually what's good there is, rather than someone canceling and having a bad experience, they're like tweaking the next time they're supposed to receive more product. And the other opportunity there too is you can do like upsells, where you're basically saying, hey, we're getting ready to ship your next order. Here's some suggested items that you can add on to that. So it doesn't have to just be a moment of fear around churn. Because the truth is, if we'll call it effectively trick someone into buying one extra time from you, it's pretty, I'll say from a business perspective, short-sighted. Your revenue and your initial retention might look better because you got a bunch of people who forgot they had a subscription to buy. Right. But ultimately, 6 months from now, you're going to be feeling it when you're looking at your retention numbers.
Your bottom line, basically watching this thing kind of go up and down.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I know that it's easier for Amazon on this side of the house to not have to do the mechanics and the marketing of that, because Amazon sort of figured it out in their giant engine. How to keep that revenue flowing for themselves. So as a seller, they kind of help you do it, which means if I go in and don't want that bag of coffee now, I can say, hey, give it to me in 3 months or give it to me in 6 months. And then it will tell me 7 days before, that it's going to go out. So I can see the power in adjusting that correctly as the marketer or the seller on this side to ensure the conversation of that subscription stays in front of the mind of the customer in terms of a value proposition. So they don't just automatically go in and kill it. In fact, as a buyer and investor in companies and building e-com companies, I think that the subscription component, the revenue opportunity for continuity is very much underlooked, especially on the Amazon side. What is your opinion of that?
You mean in terms of you'd rather have someone stay on longer and perhaps not buy?
I mean, it's continued revenue month by month. It's predictable income as long as I can maintain that. Obviously, you're not as much in the Amazon channel, I think. Forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't want to misquote you, but you're more in the direct-to-consumer, Shopify, WooCommerce, front-end traffic channels as opposed to Amazon, so I don't mean to confuse the conversation. But the same intent or buyer psychology is still in effect, regardless of which channel they're on, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you. I just want to make sure I fully understood what you were saying.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so I think by and large, I mean, especially as you're seeing more and more competition in direct-to-consumer and and just even in ads, and then like challenges around ad targeting, it's like the ability for you to over deliver for your customer has never been more important, and it's only going to become more challenging. And so one of those big things is making sure that they have a great consumer experience. And going back to like, where are the moments where most brands fail? It is around, we'll say, like over delivering around like the replenishment period. Obviously you need to have a good product, right? That goes without saying. But the next piece, again, going back to the data, is people receiving too much product. And so if you perhaps put yourself at risk of, being scared that someone's going to cancel because they're communicating with them one too many times, because ultimately that's a short-sighted game. And I think the brands who really win, whether you're looking at Apple or any of the consumer products that, as a culture that we enjoy, those are typically brands that provide a great experience. And so, I think that's, to your point, you can't overlook, or you can overlook that to your own detriment. And the challenging part is the numbers might look good early on, because you will have more people renewing in the first month. But then after that, you're going to see churn come back and bite you. And I think as a brand, if you're looking to sell your company at some point or not, like you need to build a brand with a capital B, which is that people need to have like an actual reaction, and like you need to cultivate an actual relationship with your customers and not just be something that's, we'll say, like another one of the subscriptions or products that they buy from.
Another $8 a month or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You stack those up enough times and people are like, hey, wait a second. We've got like 15 of these. This is probably a little overkill.
Well, and I think in e-commerce is unusual because like it's very rare for you to have like an $8 subscription. That's typically like digital products, right? And so the bar is even higher because let's
Correct.
say your product that you're buying is like 35, 40 bucks a month. The cost of someone, the value of retaining a customer is extremely important, but also the likelihood that someone's going to cancel if they feel like they're wasting their money is so much more because the actual cart value is higher than most of their other subscriptions.
Yeah. Well, and it also, again, as you backtrack to the brand conversation level, it is identifying not only the customer and the avatar who may purchase or repeatedly purchase certain kinds of products, but those products obviously fitting into your brand portfolio, into your product line, either through your initial product research of those or going back and looking at your product lines in your current business and saying, okay, where can I fit in a product that is a gear or accessory or a complementary product to the one I have that would engage this customer to buy, every 3 months, every month on a subscription, and really try to think smartly about that. How do you advise people on that? What is your advice for them if they're looking to be an existing seller and wanting to add on additional products or subscriptions to their brand line?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to, let's assume that the easiest for me to give advice to in this is if you have an existing business. So I would say that's one segment of brands that we work with are folks who have built up a one-time repeatable business and they want to incorporate subscriptions. One of the things you should be looking at is segmenting your customers by cohort and looking at how frequently do people typically buy, and like breaking that out into different kinds of customers. You might have some customers who buy every month or every 60 days, but they have some sort of consistency to their one-time purchases. And you can sort of work backwards from there around designing sort of at first blush what you think based off people's consumption who do buy frequently, what would be a natural subscription. Another piece is ask your customers, send them a survey, right? If you've done business. I know with Amazon, that's more complicated because you don't necessarily have their contact information. I'm curious, have you seen like really smart ways, I guess, to even have a direct one-on-one relationship?
It's how you follow up with them. So within Amazon's compliance in terms of service, you cannot take any data they give you and then just hardcore market to them through messaging, email, direct, or otherwise. But if you have an incentive version of the product warranty or other type of mechanism the customer will voluntarily become a part of, then you can get involved in a system that will help follow up with the customer, even potentially cross over their data with other data directories, and then provide additional value to that customer. If you get caught not providing value, that's where the customer will leave you a review or force seller feedback on you, or Amazon will get involved in that, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. You don't want to be in that position. So always it's about the value of what you can do for them and whether or not they're voluntarily giving you that. We use a system called Post-Purchase Pro, which follows up after the customer segments the data, and then you get a picture of that customer and who they are. From that point, you can actually email follow up a warranty or a gift or a PDF or some other value to the product that they purchased, while also offering additional products you may have within your stack. So there are ways to do it in email follow up, and of course I know on the DTC side that's very critical. SMS is critical, and a very smart follow up marketing campaign is extremely critical for your DTC.
Yeah, and one thing that we've seen work is following up with someone 14 days after they buy, because that's probably when they have their heightened sense of, we'll call it excitement about your product.
Yeah.
They've just experienced it. So they have an idea if they like your product or not. Then what you can do is you can hit them with an offer to upgrade to like an annual subscription or a prepaid annual subscription. Basically use it as an opportunity to connect with them around an upsell. So in that case, you're basically able to, the ideal is for you to be profitable on first purchase, right? What you can also do is use that opportunity to understand how much of their product they've consumed to get a sense of, hey, maybe your interval is not right. Maybe, and from a customer service perspective, it's helping your team understand what the consumption habits or behaviors are of your customers, but it also is an opportunity for you to suggest a slightly different interval, and then the consumer has a great experience. Because basically, you can be like, hey, if you're halfway through it and you're 2 weeks in, we typically see people like you, a 1 month subscription or a 30-day subscription makes the most amount of sense. And I think, again, as a consumer, I appreciate it when you make my life easier. What I don't like is to feel like you're having me do work.
People like to buy, they do not like to be sold. And that's kind of the whole thing about making sure that you do provide a valued experience, either channel or different channels, and that the customer feels like this is additional value that is leading them to consider another purchase because they're excited about the first one or the second one they made. And you know how we are as brand people. Just look at the way you buy things, the way you enjoy things, right? You don't enjoy being hammered every day in your email because you just bought, an iPhone. Apple doesn't do that, right? They let their brand experience speak for itself, and that's attraction marketing, right? So it attracts in a more, obviously, and higher value buyer. So this is really where we're getting down to. So if I might shift gears for just a second with you, Ben, and go backwards and ask you kind of a more of a personal question, if that's okay. Did you get started on this entrepreneurial journey as like a bootstrapper and a hard, guy? Like, what's your story there? Were you a trust fund baby and all of this just fell in your lap? Or what's your story, man?
So I grew up on a tree farm in Maine. But I come from like a really weird part of Maine where there was actually like a .com bubble. And so I worked at a tech startup during the first early 2000 tech bubble. I was in middle school. So like the carpool would drop me off there. I was a designer and programmer. And that was my first taste of, we'll say it like the startup life. And I thought that I was really actually annoyed because I was like, I've missed the boat. I'm only in middle school and this is my only shot.
This is it. This is it. My big moment.
But no, that's, the first company was even to like learn programming in the first place. I sold strawberries door to door that I picked at the field next to my house. And so I used to sell them.
That was your side hustle?
That was my side hustle.
Cutting grass and yours was hauling strawberries. I love it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I would like pre-sell them in bulk to restaurants. So I would do the door-to-door thing. And then I eventually realized that you could like repackage them into smoothies and things that you could charge more for. But that was
so you went into the upsell. Did you get the ice cream too? Because that would have been like the next level of like milkshakes.
I didn't get to that, but that would have been smart. Okay. And but that was one of the sort of first opportunities for me. But I always used it to fund my actual interest, which was computers and designing.
Yeah. It was such a similar story, dude. Mine was just the grass side of the house that was for, the extra money that I wanted to do what I did. I had things that I needed. The stuff I wanted, I needed the money for. So it was grass clippings, and then I could use that money for things like you said, computers or whatever, or games and things I wanted to get a hold of.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Funny story. So how did you get into the area you're at now? So if you evolved past strawberries.
Yeah. So I ran a company. So I shifted from working at this tech startup to starting a company in high school that I was a website development firm and worked with, basically we were building what was early like Flash websites. And so fast forward, I actually got burnt out of computers, but fast forward after graduating college, I started launching new companies. And, this was 2008. So Facebook was already kind of hidden its stride. And for the first time, there was this sort of like, we'll call it like an actual product-based tech company. And my first several companies I couldn't figure out a business model. And so after falling on my face several times, I basically went back and I was like, I'm going to just figure out a way that I can help other people make more money. And e-commerce at the time was just such a natural place to do it that at that point was like focused on building products for e-commerce merchants to help them make more money. And then the natural business part of that would be participating in some of the upside. But that's the part that I really enjoy is basically how do you take, as an engineer, how do you enable people to have sort of superpowers in commerce? So before this, started a company called CartHook that we grew over the course of about 7 years and sold it. And then based off that, I saw this opportunity around subscriptions. And so that's what I do today.
Pretty large, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So we ended up processing about close to $1 billion on behalf of our brands over the course of those around 5 years. And like our sort of the value that we offered was post-purchase upsells, where the whole thing was a customer, once they buy something, they're probably come from like a Facebook ad, based off of what they purchased, you presented them immediately after the checkout with a complimentary product. And that would typically on average increase your cart value by 25%. And so for a lot of these direct to consumer brands, it made the difference between them being profitable or losing money on their first customer.
On their ad spend right up front.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, big deal, especially in the media buying world, right? How to get an advantage over the other competitors. It's literally who can spend the most to buy the customer is the one that wins, right?
Yeah, and you're often competing with like VC funded brands who can afford to lose a lot of money. You certainly saw that
when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Well, that's why a lot of these print on demand and other stores have gotten really good at their upsell processes and stuff, is those who are out buying a lot of media traffic who maybe are trying that method first and stuff. are learning how to cut their teeth on that model and ensure their first, sale is profitable, or first initial sale, or AOV is high enough to really make that work in the back end. Well, that's a very cool story, man. So we got our 3 tips. We got some history, 1 billion in transactions from CartHook. That's amazing. So then you went on to did you start another company, or did you invest in one, or what did you do after that?
So I consulted as a fractional CTO for subscription e-commerce brands who were in like around the 8 figures. And so I went into this when I was at CartHook. I noticed this opportunity around subscriptions and this problem I saw around churn and people canceling not because they don't like your product, but because they were receiving too much of it. And so I just consulted as a fractional CTO, and then eventually expected that Shopify would enable other companies to offer subscription solutions. And so once they did, that's when we launched. And so we've been doing it for about 2 years.
Awesome. And is there a place, which website, or do you have an offer or something people can go take a look at?
Yeah. So our website's hey.rodeo, HEY, not like the hay that a horse eats. Hey Rodeo.
Okay. It's good to clarify that. That must be a frequently asked question.
I only realized it when I started saying it on a podcast.
The people were confusing the name. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Our company's called Rodeo, but the website's Hey Rodeo. And so, and then in terms of an offer, if you're a brand that is either trying to launch the subscription or their subscription offer, or if you're a company that offers subscriptions trying to figure out how to break through to, we'll call it from 7 to 8 figures or higher, I'm happy just to sort of jump on like a consultative call. I won't be pitching. It's more to try to understand your business, and if I can be help. I will say I am most helpful to folks who already have an existing business, because from there I can ask questions around your churn and your existing repeat consumer behavior. I will say that one of the challenges I've seen with a lot of brands, and this goes back to CartHook too, was a lot of people would, especially in the Shopify world, install our app hoping to solve their sales problems, when the actual challenge was they didn't yet have a business. Yeah. And so I'm not the best person to help with that part, but what I certainly can do is help from a technology as well as strategy side of what can you do to specifically maximize your recurring revenue.
Very, very good. Well, folks, look, Ben is a high voltage business builder. So if you are looking to maximize revenues of your brand, if you've got a direct to consumer brand that is not taking advantage of the subscription model, or if you are, and you're not quite seeing high enough AOV, if you're not seeing the customer lifetime value stick long enough, this is the dude to go check out what he's doing over at heyrodeo.com. I want to get that right. We'll put the link in the show notes and everything below. And folks, please go check him out if you need any support on that side. Subscription and continued revenue is a big thing that we look at when we're investing in companies. And if you don't have that in your company, then you may want to take a look at it today. Thanks a lot, Ben, for coming and joining me, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you like this episode, please share it with people you think will enjoy it as well. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for a brand new episode of High Voltage Business Builders.